Marketing taking the lead to drive revenue growth. Marketing, when taught, is skewed very much towards large companies such as IBM, Caterpillar, and Oracle. But revenue is generated by the entirety of the business, not just top-of-line sales and marketing. However, if marketers widen their field of view across the whole business, you have the potential to identify any number of improvements, which will result in improved customer satisfaction, increased revenues, reductions in cost, as well as additional clear points of difference for you to market on. Now, this approach is not for everyone. But if you're up for a challenge and you're keen to make a big difference for your company, then hold on to your seat, as they say, because this week on the show, we'll be giving you everything you need to look for and to spot the kind of opportunities which have massive impact and long-lasting impact. Hello and good afternoon, my name's James Rostance and this is the 414 live this Thursday afternoon, the 17th of June. And it's for you as a professional B2B marketer, if you work in-house at a company or agency side, or indeed if you're a company executive with a hands-on role in your company's sales and marketing activities. And you see, every week I speak with some of the greatest and most interesting minds in B2B marketing so that you can directly expand and enhance your professional knowledge with every single episode. Welcome along then. So here we are, www.the414.net. If you'd like to subscribe to the show to make sure that you don't miss any future episodes, as well as checking out previous episodes right there. So with that said, today we're going to be, as I said earlier, diving into the world of marketing, taking the lead on to driving revenue growth. And to help with this, we're going to cross across the pond to now Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. Please welcome Mr. Jose Palomino. Good afternoon, Jose.
Hey, good morning, James.
All right.
Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining. And I did notice actually on, obviously when we were chatting before the show, that you're officially in West Philadelphia, home of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I was quite excited about notice that.
Just in that general area. Absolutely. Been here about 15 years. So it's a nice area to be.
Have you ever bumped into him or even Carlton? Is he still knocking around the area?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I would remember that, but no, I haven't.
I would love that, especially if you happen to just jump out of that retro kind of American style taxi as well.
Yeah, of course. That would complete the picture.
It's fine. I know that I love the perception of the British by the Americans that we're always drinking tea and talking about the rain and meeting the Queen on a daily basis, because that's what we do. But equally, yeah, Americans, you're just bumping into the Fresh Prince every day.
Every day. That's
what you do. Nice. Well, yeah, thank you ever so much for joining us this Thursday morning, of course, where you are. So let's dive right in then to talking about revenue growth. And my first question to kick this all off and to hopefully get us on the right path is, what is it that usually hinders marketers from assisting with revenue growth?
I think the number one problem in all size companies, bigger companies, this is even more prevalent, but it's generally that you get so siloed. All the functions are siloed. So you have strategies being done in the C-suite. Maybe the CMO has a seat at that table. And then you run into, of course, sales is running sales, production is running production, and then marketing is tasked with either demand generation, lead generation, or branding, or some other subset. So everybody, for efficiency's sake, have modeled these things in very narrow columns. And as a result, you end up that no one really, other than maybe a really smart CEO, no one's looking at the whole picture. And so that's a real hindrance to making a bigger contribution as a marketer, because a marketer, the real B2B marketer, has access to information, has access to insights that would benefit all those other functions I mentioned.
And this is why they stand to be a real change maker, I guess, because they're uniquely able to access all of this information, which, yeah, as you say, none of the other departments are able to.
Yes, but the challenge there is they have to be willing to break out of those sometimes very comfortable silos for themselves. They want to be seen sometimes as we are the SEO experts or we're the web demand generation experts. And you're saying, well, wait a second, with all the insights you have and the visibility you have, the line of sight you have to what's going on in the market, don't you want to have a bigger seat at a bigger table? Really looking at things like the business model, the overall direction of the business. Don't let yourself get siloed by everyone else because it's comfortable and it is kind of like secret knowledge. We know the new things that are happening at Google and no one else does. That's very tactical. And you have an opportunity as a marketer to actually show off your strategic game, but you have to really ask for that opportunity and you have to see it when it's there. You have to seize it and bring real strategic value because of all the access to all the insights, information, and so on that you have. So don't let yourself get put in a box because you might get comfortable in the box and everyone else will be comfortable with you being in that box as well.
Comfort, it's the double-edged sword, isn't it? It's the great what's the word, inhibitor of innovation and I guess with that growth in that case. So how common is it for people or businesses rather to actually break out of this siloed environment and actually do what you're advocating right here?
Yeah, I think the challenge grows exponentially as the companies get larger. I mean, the reality is, you take a company like a Microsoft, for example. They have all different kind of stratified marketing functions for each product, for each region, for each market segment, right? Mega company. So they have a chief strategy officer and you have a very visionary CEO and so on. So those are things that they're really leaving that up at the very top. So if you're in that situation, chances are you are going to be highly specialized, kind of like a top surgeon at a major hospital only gets to do one kind of surgery. Move that same surgeon into a country, hospital, right? Small 100-bed facility. It's going to do a lot more and a lot more varied surgeries, for example, right? Even though they have a hyper specialization in one area. So breaking out of those silos is easier in a smaller organization because you actually have access to all the stakeholders. Chances are you're in the same executive suite. If you get into like the mega, really large, Fortune 500 companies, everyone's everywhere and it's harder to do. And there's a few key executives that are given that task to kind of hold that together. So if you're in that context right now, listening to this, watching this live presentation and saying, gee, that's me, I'm in a big company, how can I get more strategic? You're going to have to look at your world as moving incrementally to maybe some next level conversation. You're not going to go all the way to the corner office and say, here's my big pronouncement about the strategy we should take as a company, because that's not realistic that you're going to move like 10 notches up or 10 rungs up that ladder. But you take a typical B2B company, industrial, 30, 40, $50 million in size, you absolutely can break through that by just usually asking a good question of somebody in senior leadership. For example, we notice our competition is doing X, some new innovation. What do you think we might do in the next year to respond to that? What do you mean? And then, you kind of want to say like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And then you have that conversation, but at least you get the conversation rolling and they say, gee, Joe, Mary, whoever your name is, came up with something that was more than just showing me another 60-page PDF report on our Google Analytics that everybody nods, pretending they understand, and they give you the 30-minute presentation at the monthly meeting, but nobody cares because they're looking at bigger issues. They're looking at their real bottom line. They're looking at P&L. They're looking at real, market share. Those are things that matter. That's the language marketers have to use. It's the language of business success, not just the nitty-gritty black art language of the practitioner. The reality is, as a marketer, you're not going to get a bigger seat at a bigger table if you sound like you're in the boiler room talking about the intricacies of the pipes in the boiler. That's not interesting to anyone else except you. So open up, talk at a next level up, not 10 rungs up, but just even the next level up. What are the implications of something that we found, that we've learned, that we're seeing, that we're observing? And those things are things that an executive listening to that says, this marketer doesn't sound like the other ones I had before. It sounds like they're more interested in what the business is doing and where the business is heading.
Wow. You've put the point, put your finger on the point there just beautifully. The concept of talking to company executives and broader reaches of the company by using languages. What was the term that you used? Is about outside the boiler room. I thought that was a great way of putting it. So yeah, rather than using our day-to-day marketing language, you're seeking to, I don't know, cross bridges in a way to talk with them about the world in terms of benefits to them, which I suppose is actually a core principle of marketing, which we might not always.
But it's very interesting you mentioned that, James. So the marketers that we're speaking to right now, they all know this in terms of their mission, like how they talk about branding their product, how they work on messaging, all of that. But the internal application of these things is where it falls apart. Because then they hide behind, or maybe that's a little harsh, but they find comfort. We talked about comfort at the beginning. They find comfort in the arcane terminology of their space. So I was in a meeting recently where somebody just, broke out and said, yeah, the ROAS on this campaign. And finally, like half an hour later, somebody very senior in this company finally said, what does ROAS mean?
No, really.
and you say, and there are other words and other terms that actually help us say, very in simple, plain English, how well did our ads perform in terms of the revenue they generated versus what we spent on those ads? Oh, I get that. At any level of leadership, I'll understand what that means. But we use these terminologies, and I'm not saying the senior leaders shouldn't know what ROAS means. I'm simply saying they often don't. And often I was actually surprised that somebody would actually say out loud, what does that mean? Because we often in business culture, when somebody uses an acronym or a term that we're not familiar with, it's very human to say, well, I don't want to be the only idiot here not knowing what that means. So I'll look it up later. And that's how meetings happen. So I'm a real advocate for use plain language, say what you mean what you say. And as a friend said, don't say it mean. Those things are pretty good in life as well.
No, I really like that. In fact, I'm not the only one. A regular friend of the show, Gamdan Alriki, I've got his comment on screen right here. He's saying, yes, that was a great insight in terms of communicating in plain English what the benefits are, or just the thing that you're talking about, and not using, or trying as possible to not use acronyms. Because, if you're not using them every day, I can well see that's a problem. So, if you've just joined us, by the way, we're talking with Jose Palomino over there. He's in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
I'm here.
Yeah, and we're right in the middle of talking about marketing taking the lead to generate revenue growth. And what I'd just like to ask you quickly, Jose, is could you give us some maybe examples of the actual areas where taking this approach of breaking out of our own individual silos, how we can actually help our companies drive revenue growth by looking for things that we can help with and raise the value of?
Yeah, I'm going to give you one of my favorite examples just because it had so many positive outcomes over a period of several years. It was the gift that kept on giving. So the company I was working with delivered home heating oil. So in the States on the East Coast, about maybe 20% of the homes are heated with heating oil. And heating oil is a global commodity. Heating oil number 2. It doesn't matter who you buy it from, it's the same oil. And that market is shrinking. In the States, people convert from oil to gas, to natural gas, and all new construction is natural gas. So think about that if you're in that market and you've built out a fleet of delivery trucks and that's been your business, you have thousands of customers, and it's going to continually dwindle. So everyone knows about barriers to entry. The bigger challenge in markets like that is barrier to exit. All the competitive players can't get out of the market because what are they going to do? They have these trucks and rolling stock and personnel. They only do one thing. So this company, as I was digging into trying to really help them uncover their value proposition, what could stand out, it turned out what they did was a literal commodity. I mean, you can't differentiate it, it seemed. And then it came out in a conversation. They had taken steps to improve their software prediction, the software they used to predict when people needed deliveries, to reduce overtime hours because they didn't want to do emergency runs over the weekends, which was killing margins. I said, wow, how effective is that? And he said, well, last year, out of 60,000 deliveries, we were only late on 9 deliveries. That's 99.9995, something like that. It's close to Six Sigma. And I said, wow, does any of you, do all your competitors have this? They say, oh, no, we commission a special. Everyone else they maybe have 95% accuracy. Mind you, this one's almost literally 100% accuracy. I said, well, who would care about that? And he said, well, the higher end customers who like automatic delivery really value that reliability. And sure enough, we were able to shift the company, its marketing fully aiming at those higher end homes where they absolutely wanted a guarantee of delivery, not a best effort, but an actual reliable delivery. And it turned out they were able to, in a commodity category, enjoy roughly 50% greater margins per gallon than any of their competitors. So the market's still at a meta level, still shrinking because that's happening. That's a global phenomenon as people shift to natural gas. But they increased their market share of the premium houses, and it bought them time to think about other things to do with their business model. And it's been very successful for them. So you're talking about almost 50% greater margins. And the point I'm getting to answer your question, James, this came out of a marketer, and I was working with the VP of marketing and myself, looking at operational excellence and finding something that no one was talking about. And just saying, gee, now that we understand that there's actually something we do better than the other guys, let's tell the world about it. And we actually added something that no one else had in the business. We added a guarantee that if we let you run out of oil and if you subscribe to automatic delivery, we will fill your tank, which is like a $1,500 purchase, for free. So our motto became, others make promises, we make guarantees. And that's what set us apart. Again, marketing meets operations. Doesn't happen unless the conversation is that inclusive and that holistic.
I think that is an awesome example of, well, I guess what we're hoping to cover today. Wow, a shrinking market, and that just to recover and recap that. So is it that they increased their margin on products sold?
On a per gallon basis, they could charge more,
right?
Because their service, it wasn't the oil that was any different,
yeah.
But the level of service was unparalleled, literally unmatched anywhere else in the market. And it didn't come from a marketing idea to say, let's have a better service. It was operations that had come up with a better service to save money on cost, i.e. overtime hours, but it yielded a huge marketing result. And my challenge to anyone listening to this now and watching this interview who's a marketer is, don't just look at marketing ideas, really get to know your business. Like, talk to people in operations, ask questions about what are you doing that's any better, any different than anyone else. It's not just a C-suite conversation. If you're in a facility where you can actually walk the floors and talk to people in your own company, and you'll pick up little nuggets of things like, that seems interesting. And then you can find out, is it really interesting? And if it's interesting, it might be a distinctive, something you can anchor a whole messaging campaign around because it's something that someone else is not doing. But you won't know that if you're in your cubicle, your office, on a Zoom, your home office, and Zooming all the time, and you're not talking to these folks, to your own organization. You won't uncover these gems. So it's really important, if you're going to be a strategic marketer, and we use that term very broadly, but I use it in a much more defined way. I'm saying strategic marketer, that means you are able to help create strategic results. And that's an example that we just gave there. So thank you for highlighting that, James.
That is just quite brilliant. I did take a note when you were covering that the very specific term that you used was you looked at operational excellence. What a great term. So yeah, as you said, so that was stuff that the business was already doing. It just took people to step outside of the business a bit and I guess have working on their business rather than inside it so much, to spot that quite game-changing benefit which the business had got, but just at that time wasn't actually leveraging properly. So yeah. Well, in that case, you know what? I think this would be a great time from here then to just for me to ask. So where would you actually start in terms of a quest to help drive revenue growth, and maybe come up with a similar marketing point which was unearthed with your oil delivery company? So yeah, so where would you start in this quest?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we have a process called revenue throughput assessment, right? So we use we provide an analysis for that. But anyone listening to this could get to the same place. There's 8 major areas we look at. One is your targeting sharp? So if I'm a marketer, I'm saying, okay, are we really sharply defined on who we're targeting? Do we have clarity on that? And more importantly, not do I know it as the marketer who writes it down, but if I were to talk to random people in my own company, would they all agree that's our real target market? That's a lot fuzzier in practice than most people think it is. And if you're a smaller, more entrepreneurial, mid-market company, 10, 20, $30 million, you have to get sharper on that. You have to be more focused. So a marketer can right away just say, like, who do we really serve? And then more importantly, who do we serve best? Like, who are we really aligned to serve well? Secondly, do we provide them some differentiated value? The oil company was just one example, but just asking the questions, even as simple as this: ask your CEO, ask your CFO, what are 10 reasons people buy from us? And then ask this follow-on question: which of these 10 things that you think people are buying for, the reasons people used to buy from us, which of these 10 things can our competitors make an equally credible claim to do as well? And usually the pushback there is, oh no, they're not as good as us. They don't do it quite as well. I say, I didn't ask that question. I said, does your prospect perceive that they're probably as good as you? Without knowing the inside baseball, they might. Then you look, of course, marketing and sales processes, right? So a lot of smaller organizations, sales processes, so if you would put it on a flow chart on a whiteboard, it'd be customer calls, we provide proposal, close deal. And I said, that's not a sales process. That's a hope process. So really looking, do you have a sales process? Do you have a way that you could say is a rinse repeatable way to actually make sales happen, especially in B2B? But you have to also look at a few other things. You have to look at your leadership. Like, are we casting a vision for our own team internally? Are we talking about things that we aspire to? Do we have the resources necessary to pull things off? So again, mid-market companies, trade shows, which of course with coronavirus, not many people go to trade shows, but everybody wants to get back to them. And most industries have at least one a year that's pretty major. For a small company to exhibit at a show like that could be $50,000, $60,000, $75,000 spent. And if you ask, well, how many actual leads have you ever gotten from that? And in many cases, it's like, well, we got a lot of cards. We filled out the cards, kind of thing. That's the answer. So, all right, maybe that's not the best use of your limited working capital. And then, of course, just production. Like, are you able to do the things you promise people to do? And are there things you do that you're not promising that you should, as in the oil company example? And last but not least, and this is an area that gets overlooked greatly in many, many B2B companies, is customer success. Are you actually looking at how customers really enjoy or don't enjoy dealing with you? You could have customers for a long time that buy from you because your price was the lowest, or you were the only game in town, but as soon as they could find a substitute, they chose the substitute. And that's when you lose an account. You say, what happened? I thought they liked us. Well, you had no basis to believe that other than you got some orders from them. And also, you don't even know how much more business could I do with them. People aren't asking that question. So as a marketer, looking at that matrix of 8 things, we call them the 8 valves, like picturing a pipe where revenue has to flow through. Those 8 valves, if you picture them and you could get a little bit more granular on each of those valves, you as a marketer can help your leadership team really say, let's have a holistic view of our business and make sure that the valves are wide open so that opportunities can flow through the system, which is our business. Because it's not growth, revenue is not just a sales issue. It's not just a marketing issue. It's the whole of the business issue. When you look at it just as marketing and sales, James, it's kind of like somebody saying, well, racing or having a race car that can win competition races is just a matter of having good tires. You say, well, Probably a good idea to have good tires, right? I mean, you would want good tires and have a supply of them to replace, but you would say there's probably a lot more involved in winning championship races to just having good tires. So when people say marketing is, or marketers think that marketing is the, like, maybe it's the tip of the spear, but you still need a lot of spear to make it work. And that's the issue. So you have a unique opportunity as marketers, as professional marketers, or as a CEO leader of a company that's in charge of your marketing. There's a bigger picture to look at. And the exciting thing is this is like getting more colors in your crayon box. There's more things you can affect that actually can lead to the growth of your company.
Yes. It always makes me smile when people mention coloring boxes or crayons, because that's our number one skill, of course. Yes.
Of course.
So you mentioned there the 8 valves as you like to look at it. Could you just quickly run through what each of those 8 valves are? So we've definitely got those noted down, please.
Sure, absolutely. So targeting and differentiation is the second valve. Taken together, that's your value proposition, right? But we separate them because you have to really look at things about targeting, differentiation. Then there's marketing in the classic sense of, do you even have a marketing plan, like a written plan? Sales, which is in B2B, almost everything you do is going to pay off in a sales conversation somewhere. So the whole sales process, sales management, all those things are sales. That's the fourth valve. Those 4 are kind of client facing. They face your customers. The internally facing 4, which can have an equally significant impact on your revenue growth, is risk and leadership. We kind of put those things together. Issues around risk, like for example, customer concentration. You tell me 50% of your revenue comes from one big account. I say you're a great risk if anything should go south on that one account. The second internal valve would be resources. Do you have the resources necessary to do the things you plan on doing? Then there's production, and then there's customer success or fulfillment. The things that make customers happy at the end of having bought from you. So targeting, differentiation, marketing, sales, risk, resources, production, and customer success. Those things taken together is essentially like a mini MBA view of your business. But if you understand how they correlate and work together, you gain huge power in what we call the ultimate conversion, which is taking an opportunity, which is this, we need more opportunities, but you have to convert the opportunity into actual revenue, or else it's just filling up space on your pipeline.
100%. That was really well put as well. And I really hope for everyone watching and listening right now that this hopefully is really resonating with you, because for me, right now, it's becoming ever more clear that this is why you in marketing have got the brilliant opportunity to make use of this and to really make a difference, because you've got access to take that aerial view, if you will, of those 8 different valves, which Jose mentioned just there. Right. Well, the next part then, I guess we should cover. In the process of driving revenue growth and setting on this quest to do this, what are some of the common mistakes which people make in doing this, and that which you'd be mindful to people to be cautious of and hopefully avoid?
I think there's 2 things, probably, and they go in opposite directions, James. One is saying, well, this is just way too hard. I'm going to stay in my silo. I'm going to do what I do. They've tasked me to redo the website. They've tasked me to increase, leads coming through the website. That's what I'm going to do. I'll let other people worry about other things, and I'll let sales worry about closing sales, and I'll worry about production doing production, and so on and so forth. So you kind of hunker down because it's hard. Right. But most things in life, at some level, there's some hard parts to it, right? Olympic athletes don't get there by rolling out of bed and being great. They work at it very hard. So it's no different here. If you're going to win, you have to work at it, but you have to have a plan. And it is about having that blueprint. You use the term aerial view. I love that thought. We sometimes call it the CAT scan view. It's like what's really going on. So I'd say the first kind of trap is to say, gee, that's too hard. People don't get what I'm talking about. Let me just do what I'm doing. The other is saying, no, I believe. I got it. 8 valves, fantastic, great system. Let me go hard charging and start talking to everybody about this and make them understand they have to look at the business holistically. So that's something that I had a systems professor in my MBA program at Villanova that said, don't lead with your chin. So some of these things, like any change management, you have to start winning adherence slowly but surely. It just takes work. So the first thing is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? So the real thing is get to know your people in production, get to know people even in finance, get to know people in sales. I mean, that's the great divide, marketing and sales. And simple question is really disarming, like, hey, Joe or Mary, whoever's heading up sales for you, is there anything that I can do to help you and make your day easier? They'll have answers and you'll get insights. And then you ask, well, how would you use that? Oh, you need a new piece of collateral? Let me see what I can do. But can you just help me understand the use case? And all of a sudden you're getting this deeper and deeper understanding of how these other parts of the business are working. Now you can't do, again, if you have a boss, they're going to say, well, why are you walking around everyone else? Do your job. So again, you don't lead with your chin, slowly but surely, but eventually you become that person that just understands the intricacies and interconnections, and you will have those aha moments. And aha moments are not something, it's not truly coin operated. You can't just put a quarter in the machine and get an aha moment out of it. It usually comes because you're building things into your subconscious mind because you're curious, you're interested, you're asking questions. And from that, it'll come to you somewhere at 2 a.m. You'll wake up and you say, boy, I better write this down. That's what will happen. So I'd say make sure that you don't lead with your chin and don't hunker down where you've been right now. You absolutely can make this transformation to a more strategic, holistic view of your business. And you can be that change agent that makes that happen. I would just say it'll take a little bit of time unless you get complete buy-in from your executive leadership team. So if you are the owner of a company, even there, you still want to get buy-in. Even if you say, I get it, I totally believe this is what we should be doing, I would say, okay, just make sure you find ways to communicate this to people so they can understand where you're going, so they don't think it's, oh boy, it's Bob with another one of his ideas. But instead, this is a better way. It's a framework from which we can actually build our business.
That was actually going to be my next question, actually, about getting buy-in. This is something I've taken a real interest in, is the idea of the need for marketers to lead the charge and get buy-in to concepts, campaigns, and ways of doing things. So is there anything that you would maybe add then in that case, in giving an answer to what should marketers do to get buy-in to this as a concept so that they can ultimately run with it for them and the company?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things you can do is, and you should, if you're a marketer, if you're a senior leader in marketing, or if you're even an individual contributor, understand what the impact of this would be on the people you're trying to enlist. So you know what's in it for you. You're saying, wow, I'll be seen as the hero with the big strategic vision, and also we're growing the business. And then, when the annual meeting, the boss will call me up and here's the trophy for employee of the year, that kind of thing. You can visualize all of that. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, there's like 10 or 20 stakeholders you have to enlist to support this. What's their trophy going to look like? So really get a thought about what's their trophy. If you're marketing your product to the marketplace and you believe in this conceptually as something you want to bring to your company, you have to market it internally with the same principles. What is its value proposition? What is the right messaging? What are the outcomes that it will yield for the different stakeholders that you want to incorporate? And so don't overthink it, but don't not think about it either. And the bigger the organization and the more people need to get involved, you may have to actually strategize this a bit. It may deserve some whiteboard time to really think it through a little bit so that you can approach people and say, Mary, I have an idea and I'd like to run it by you and see what you think about it. And then also Mary's more open because you're sharing an idea. You're not saying I have a proposal for you. And you're not telling her, Mary, I need you to do the following for us. Because then Mary's saying, well, who are you? Until a minute ago, you weren't in my chain of command, and now you're telling me what to do. So you never want to do that. You really want to get buy-in is something you build up. And this doesn't have to be like a forever project, but it's probably, if you really want to bring about this kind of shift, it's probably 30, 60 days of work with some key stakeholders. And here's the beauty of it. Once you start going on it, they too will replicate what you're doing. And even in a very large organization, you can see this actually start cascading outward, and where it becomes more common language and everybody's comfortable thinking about their business that way.
Really nice stuff. So earlier on, you gave us that really quite wonderful example of the oil company, which had done great things in applying this methodology to digging out their new sales and marketing points, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other examples that you think would be really good to share right now to help illustrate what can be done and how you can basically make kind of something out of nothing by following your principle?
Yeah, no. So I'll give you a really great example. It's a company that they are still actually, but they changed hands since, partly because of the success of this. They were one of the leading companies in the world that painted airline, or rather airport stripes. So all those lines on the runways and stuff, somebody has to do them, and they have to be done in a very regulated way. They're very precise, down to the thickness, the amount of glass beads that are in the paint to make reflection happen, which you really like. If you're ever flying and landing at night, you want your pilot to have reflective runways so they can see where they're going.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. And even down to like what they call the T-bars, which is the lines that tell a plane where to stop so that another plane can land in front of it. If that's off by 18 inches, you have death. I mean, it's that serious. So it's a real thing. So this company had attained a level of growth. It was doing well, but it hit a plateau. So plateaus are really common in B2B. Companies just, they do well, but then something just keeps them at a certain range. And they wanted to break through that range. So through this kind of process where we incorporated everybody together, we actually did a session where we actually did a revenue throughput analysis with all stakeholders together, kind of giving input to that to see where the issues were. And one of the things that came out is they didn't have as good a visibility to revenue and opportunities as they needed. And this is beyond just CRM. They wanted to have visibility that came from all the different people. They had estimators, they had work crews. There's a lot of things that affected their ability to predict revenue. So we created a simple Google Doc spreadsheet that the different stakeholders could, on even a weekly basis, update key opportunities. And what happened was their visibility to revenue became super sharp. They could tell 6 months in advance how the year was going to end with a certainty that they never had before. That also allowed them to put sales resources on those opportunities that maybe they had anecdotally thought were doing well, but when they had this fully like 360 view of that opportunity, they said, boy, we better put some attention on this. So long and the long of it is within a year, they grew about 30%. And they were already like one of the big operators on the globe doing this kind of service. And in fact, because of that, at least to a large degree, they were able to then sell the business. So a very exciting story of how that happened, just by getting everybody on the same page, thinking the same way, solving a particular problem, but thinking of everyone having input into it, and then using really low-tech tools. A Google Doc spreadsheet was their better CRM solution. They could have eventually built up, using Salesforce and so on. Of course they could have, but we wanted results now. So we were able to do it and got results very quickly.
I think what makes that example even much better is the fact that, as you say, it was a relatively low-tech tools that you're using. And with that, because Google Docs, right? What I thought was really cool about that is that it's a wonderful example of, it's not what you've got, it's very much how you use it. And it's the application of everything that you're covering on the show today is what got them that terrific result. That's fantastic. I really like that.
Great.
Well,
no, that's exciting. It's exciting when I tell the story. Still get excited about it.
I would too. So how long? Just to add a bit more detail on that. How long after you worked with them did they end up then selling? Then
In 1 year.
1 year. Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah. I suppose this is where you have like a disclaimer on screen saying all results are not the same.
Oh yeah. Well, clearly, and they were. Well, here's the thing. They were a well-run company that was already a leader, but had hit a plateau that was, by most accounts, people in the industry would say they hit where they should be. but there was next level growth, which had to do with opportunities that they were already processing, already handling it. But again, what happens with big, especially industrial type opportunities could slip from one quarter to the next. All of a sudden, something that you for sure thought was third quarter becomes second quarter next year.
Right.
It's pulling that stuff in, making sure you have visibility to what all the issues are. And I love this little mental exercise. There was a longtime colleague of mine, Ralph Witcher, who taught me this. He says, if you could imagine the day you're supposed to close that deal, the deal does not close, why would that have been? And it forces the mind to think about the missing pieces in that story that kept you from closing. So it's a little tidbit, but it's a really powerful part of how to start thinking about revenue throughput, right? It's always everything has to flow through. And what gets in the way of it? Get rid of those obstacles, and then you get more flow, therefore more revenue, and you're going to enjoy bigger margins. All those things are outflows of removing those obstacles.
Nicely put. Right. We've covered an awful lot, I think, in the 42 minutes we've been on there. So I guess now I do need to ask you then, please, what would you like the audience to have as a core takeaway, or even core takeaways from all of this that will help them move forwards?
Yeah, well, we have an owner's guide for revenue throughput, and it's on our site at valueprop.com/guides, valueprop.com/guides. It's free. And it's really well put together in terms of explaining these core principles. There are a couple of other guides there that they're happy to access, but they can go right to the one that talks about revenue throughput, valueprop.com/guides. And there's also more information there as to if they wanted to find out any more or go deeper into it. But the guide is designed to give a real basic education on what we've just talked about. And I think, frankly, if they play back this interview and read that guide, any marketer on this will say, I got the basic idea of it, and maybe even do some implementation around that.
Nice. And what would you say with regard to giving an extra bit of motivation to want to do this? So what would be your rallying call to arms for that?
Oh, yeah. Well, basically, and we saw this even in the last year and a half, right? Which is, the revenue you don't get this year, you're not going to make it up next year. Even if you get growth next year, you still lost it this year. So the urgency of this is if you're in a business that wants to grow, and I think candidly, unless you're totally in a lifestyle business and just life is good and you're good. But if you're running a business that's intended to employ people, to make services and so on, you have to look at growth, because growth is a marker. Just like a good blood pressure doesn't mean you're completely healthy, but it's sure a good place to start. So revenue and the fact that you're growing says I probably have a good value proposition. I'm probably targeting the right customers. If I'm growing, I'm probably executing some sort of marketing plan at some level. I'm probably executing sales. I'm managing working capital. I'm producing on time, and I'm keeping customers happy. When you don't have growth, one of those things is probably off. And it's subtle. It's not as obvious. It's not, well, new website, that will fix it. No, it won't if you're 30 days late on production every time. No, it won't if your customer service is hostile, and you don't know it is because you're the CEO. You don't ever perceive your customer service from the other side of the phone. So these are things you have to look at. So I would say anybody listening say growth is essential. It's a sign of health. It is what really purifies and clarifies the truth of your business. If you're not growing, you're missing the mark on something, and you better find out what it is, because your competitors will find out, your customers will become aware of it, and you can go from flat or plateau. You say, that's all right. We're okay. We're growing 5% a year. That can quickly become we're shrinking 5% a year. And guess what happens there? Margins get squeezed. Things get a little bit shaky and desperate. And again, the world could change. We don't know. Inflation, deflation, pandemics. I mean, we've gone through recessions and terroristic attacks. We don't know. So take the growth that's available to you now. Now's the time. You can do it, and you can lead the charge. If you have a view of marketing and your markets, then you're the person that can actually lead that charge. Whether you're the CEO, owner, or the CMO, or the VP of marketing, this is absolutely something that you can actually lead the charge on. Again, don't lead with your chin. Build buy-in. and follow the idea of a framework so you have a holistic view, this is within reach to do.
That was so perfectly put, Jose. I love that. in terms of a battle cry to fellow marketing warriors, that was the one. That was an absolute winner. Seriously, thank you very, very much. This whole thing has been really awesome, but particularly that last bit of much needed motivation at the end right there.
Well,
all right.
My pleasure, James.
Jose Palomino, live from Philadelphia in Pennsylvania on the east coast of the United States right there. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon here, this morning where you are.
My pleasure, James. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. And if you've enjoyed watching, then please do make sure that you're definitely signed up to the show. www.the414.net is where you can sign up by email to get your weekly email updates so that you never miss an episode. And it's where you can also go right in 2 minutes time to check out any previous episodes that you might have missed, or if you want to go back and dive into other topics which are similar to the one that we've been covering today. So there we go, www.the414.net, and of course it's on every single podcasting channel and station, so you can listen to it on the go, as they say. Right. Well, there we go. This has been the 414. It's for you as a professional B2B marketer, for you to directly expand and enhance your professional knowledge every single week, where I speak with some of the greatest and most interesting minds in B2B marketing so that you can do just that. All right. Well, look, my name's James Rostans, and I'll see you here same time next week.